Hey everyone, and yeah, it's a sad day for liberty in Canada. I hang my head in shame, and mostly for those who represent the silent majority in this country. I mean, we've already known, I've discussed this, I've talked about this kind of stuff extensively. The sheer fact that there's 4.1 million Canadians, at least in this country, that work for the government in some capacity, whether it's on the local, provincial, or federal level. So we know that at least 4 million Canadians who are eligible to vote are going to choose to pick one of the establishment parties. But because, of course, they want to keep the status quo going. Those are the people that benefit from the ruling establishment or the status quo. And then, you got to think about the people that are part of their family or their children. Or there's lots of, like I say, there's lots of Canadians. I don't know exactly how many million of them. But, if you got 4.1 million that actually work for the government, then you got, the crony corporations, the banksters, people who are subsidized anyway, the media industry. I mean, there's lots of pigs at the trough in Canada. And we knew that those people that are typical voters that vote to maintain the status quo, we knew that it was going to be a task to overcome to try to challenge these people because they've got a lot of entrenched power and incentive to get out the vote. But what people like myself were trying to describe and talk about for so long, ever since the PPC come to exist under the leadership of Maxime Bernier, is there's 8 to 10 million Canadians typically that don't choose to participate in the voting process at all. That's that silent majority that a lot of us have talked about. Me in particular, a few times in my past videos. But apparently, those 8 to 10 million Canadians, those who do represent the majority, the silent majority in this country, chose to sit on the sidelines for another election. Apparently, everything we've done, all the hard work and effort, the tens of thousands of members and supporters and the hundreds of candidates in the PBC and all that, like I say, all that groundwork, all that grassroots work that we did to try to get people out to vote, that silent majority. Now, I'll just say from my own personal experience, yeah, me and 5 members of my family showed up to vote last night, all for the PBC in my particular riding. So I made that happen. And I got a lot of other people in different jurisdictions or ridings to do the same thing. But once again, very, very small in numbers because, I mean, people like myself, hey, I'm one, right? I'm an individual. So I can only play so much of a role. But I mean, I did my part. And I recognize there are quite a few Canadians that the type of ones that watch my video or my stream like yesterday. And I was so proud to see all of you people. And thanks for showing up to my stream, by the way. It was a great stream. And I really appreciate all the support and all the people in the stream who did support the PPC. You did a great job. At least you stepped up the plate and said you were willing to challenge the status quo. So don't feel bad for yourself or for anything you've done. Feel bad for the rest of Canadians who have failed or faltered and seemingly aren't recognizing the writing on the wall. I don't know. I guess you could say some of them are just too busy, but I mean, come on. It's one day every 4 years. Are you really too busy on that one day every 4 years to at least let your voice be heard in any way? Like I said, I totally get the people that don't want to vote, but the ones that do, they did. So as much as you chose to sit on the sidelines, I don't expect, a lot of them apparently don't watch my videos, the silent majority. Apparently, well, it's a very tiny minority of those of you who do watch my videos, but that other 9 million Canadians that don't watch my videos, well, I mean, I was hoping a whole lot of people would share my information, but even those that you did, listen, we can place lots of blame, and over the next few weeks, I'll be digging through the numbers and trying to scrutinize every aspect of how this election result played out. But at the very least, even today, the reality of the matter is that the silent majority in this country chose to remain silent once again. And the proof is in the numbers. Headline of the Globe and Mail, Federal Election 2019. Voter turnout dips to 66% compared with enthusiasm that brought Trudeau to power 4 years ago. This is being reported by Molly Hayes, October 22nd, 2019. Roughly 66% of eligible voters cast ballots in Monday's federal election. An anticlimactic turnout after a record-breaking attendance at advanced polls. More than 27 million Canadians were eligible to vote in this election, including long-term expats living abroad thanks to a Supreme Court ruling. About 17.9 million Canadians voted this year, according to Elections Canada's count, with more than 98% of polls reporting. That translates to 65.95% of eligible voters, but that does not include people who registered on election day. So I mean, right there, what you're seeing. So there's 27 million Canadians in 2019, this year, that are of adult age and eligible to vote. And based on this number, as they're pointing out, 17.9 million of them actually turned out to vote. So that tells you roughly 10 million Canadians. And like I said in my past videos, if you don't believe that I'm very understanding how this plays out, look at my past videos. The proof is in the pudding, folks. I always say it's roughly between 8 and 10 million people in this country who represent the silent majority. And if just a majority or a plurality of that 8 to 10 million showed up to vote, it would be enough to form an entire majority without taking any of the other votes into account that vote for the status quo or the establishment parties. 10 million. I mean, the numbers are already, let me just pull it up here real quick. Yeah. So the numbers, how it played out, the total votes was 17.88 million people. And as you see the numbers broken down here in this chart, total votes, well, the Conservatives actually got the majority of the votes, the popular votes. The Conservatives actually got a majority of them. The Liberals were a few hundred thousand behind. The Conservatives got 6.1 million, and the Liberals got 5.8 million. But even if you take the plurality, like I said, whether you go with the 5.8 or the 6.1, both of those numbers are lower than the 8 to 10 million Canadians who didn't vote, which actually this election, as we see, because of the increase in the population, it's 10 million. So the 10 million Canadians who are eligible to vote, who don't normally participate in the process, still chose to sit on the sidelines. 10 million of them. Like I say, that's the representation of that silent majority who genuinely have the ability, based on their numbers, to affect the political landscape in this country in a tremendous way, in a big way. But once again, they chose to sit on the sidelines. I don't know. Like I say, folks, this is just reality. I'm just reporting on it. There'll be lots to talk about, lots to discuss, lots of blame to go around subsequent to this election playing out and this result. But it's all right there. The numbers speak volumes. In 2015, more than 17.7 million Canadians, 68.3% of eligible voters, cast ballots, up from 14.8 million, 61.1% in 2011, and the highest in almost a quarter of a century. The lowest turnout was just one election earlier, in 2008, when 58.8% of voters turned out. Advanced turnout this time around was roughly 4.7 million, a 29% increase over the record set in 2015, and a surge that experts largely attribute to logistical changes that made it easier to vote. Hours at advanced polling stations were increased this year, giving voters a 12-hour stretch for the first time each day to cast their ballots over the Thanksgiving long weekend. The number of advanced polling stations also increased to 6,135, up from just under 5,000 in 2015. Richard Johnson, a political science professor at the University of British Columbia and research chair in public opinion, elections, and representation, stressed that it is difficult to deduce much from the advanced poll statistics. Those voters tend to be highly engaged people who have gone through the process before and will likely vote regardless. They're really just taking advantage of a convenience program, Professor Johnson said. Anyways, folks, I'll place a link to this article in the description of the video below. Like I said, there's going to be lots of videos here coming out referencing and breaking down the numbers of this election. But at the very least, the numbers are right here, and I'll place both articles. This one's out of, like I say, the Globe and Mail, and then there's another one by CBC with the headline, Canadian election drew nearly 66% of registered voters. But like I say, the numbers, it's all right there. Right? It's undeniable that the silent majority chose to remain silent once again. What it's going to take to get those people off their duffs, off their seats, and engage in the process. And once again, I'm not a fan of it, but even myself as a libertarian that is not a big fan of the election process. I mean, at least I'm pragmatic enough to know, well, if we don't, like the 10 million, yes, you got to sit home and you didn't get to participate. I get that. And I guess somehow, maybe in your mind, and I actually believe that might be true, you can say, well, hey, at least I didn't contribute to voting for the ruling establishment or one of the lessers of evils. And that's true, and you can carry that with you. But it also means those of us who were trying desperately to pivot away from the ruling establishment, we're just so small in numbers that we really could have used your help. But well, at the end of the day, though, folks, whether you choose to vote or you don't, and like I say, you can deal with that morality or the ethics of doing so. You can deal with that internally, and fight through that kind of stuff in your mind. I get it, and I get why you're doing it. But at the end of the day, like I say, the statists, the authoritarians, the big government proponents, the crony corporations, the banksters, all of these elitists, these political pundits, I mean, they're all sitting back today laughing their asses off at the fact that, yeah, we're all in such disarray, so divided, and seemingly a lot of people that are apathetic to the entire process that they recognize now. I suppose they realize that, yeah, they've got this, not just this election in the bag, but if this is the results going forward, and especially an election that is important as this it was, I guess the establishment or the ruling elite, they generally don't have much to fear. And at the end of the day, a winner is a winner is a winner. And the ruling establishment, the political establishment, the media establishment, the big government authoritarians, and their crony corporate counterparts, they won big time. We lost. I think actually all Canadians, or at least most or the majority of Canadians, actually lost too. Well, definitely those 10 million people, you're going to lose too. But like I say, it is what it is, folks. I don't know. I wish it wasn't the case. I desperately wish that at least a substantial portion of that silent majority had chose to step up the plate and help support those of us who are desperately trying to get Canada on a proper path to respecting individual freedom, liberty, personal responsibility, and all that comes with being a free human being. But apparently Canadians they're just not there yet. I guess they haven't suffered enough. Well, over the next 4 years, or depending on how this all breaks down, because it is a minority government after all, we don't know what's going to last a whole 4 years. Could be a vote of confidence. We could be going to another whole election in short order. Who knows? But at least in this interim period, yep, Canadians are still going to suffer under the big government regimes of the Liberals and the Conservatives. Well, and as far as the Liberals go, well, they'll just probably join up with what? I mean, the NDP already said, Jagmeet said, hey, maybe they'll join together and form a majority and get their full 4 years and be able to run rickshaw all over the rest of us because they have, once again, they'll be able to form a coalition that will represent a majority. And we're talking about left-leaning parties here. We're talking about the Liberals and the NDP. They're seemingly vying to see who can be as far left as possible. But now they're going to be able to combine forces. Well, like I say, let's see how this all pans out for the foreseeable future. I think a lot of those Canadians, well, whether it's those who supported the establishment parties or those who sat on the sidelines and watched those of us who were fighting desperate to get out from underneath this kind of big government, well, I think even those people are going to suffer as a consequence for their apathy or their compliance or conformity. At the end of the day, there's really going to be a lot of pain be spread around a lot of Canadians on both sides of the political aisle and everywhere in between. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.